Welcome. Thank you for coming in person. I know some of you are on Zoom, and thank you for coming on Zoom. I'm Andrea Dupree. I'm the program director here at Lighthouse, and I'm very pleased to see so many people thinking about or currently writing a book. That is an exciting prospect for 2025 and beyond. We are not going to be able to fully cover everything during this session, but this is a great way to get to meet some of the mentors, some of the other participants at Book Project, some of the past participants who can give you some perspectives on what the program is all about. I personally wanted to shout out some of, we celebrate all books, but some of the books that have actually sold and come out recently, and I thought I would just focus on the last time we did this, the time from last January to now, some of the movement in the book project, just to give you a kind of a glimpse of what it's like. In February, we heard that Ji Yun Jun had sold 2 books at auction in a major deal with Knopf and One World. The next month, we heard that Nini Berendt, who graduated a couple years ago, 5 years ago, had her debut novel coming out with Tin House, and that's coming out in June. It's called There Are Reasons for This. That same month, we heard that 2022 grad Simo Stolzoff had sold his second book. His first book he sold during his book project tenure, and he sold a second book to Dutton. In April, Jenny Dandy, who signed a 3-book deal for her cozy mysteries, would you call them? Had her first book come out, and then I've heard from her yesterday, actually. She has her second and third ones drafted. And then over the summer, we heard that Lior Torenberg sold her debut novel at auction to, was it Simon & Schuster? Yes. I think so. You know. And at that point, like right around that time, Carrie Leibowitz, who graduated 2 years ago, had her debut book come out, How to Winter, from Penguin. I checked on Amazon today. It's number 12 in the category of depression. But, and then just around that time as well, Angelique Stevens sold her debut memoir to Simon & Schuster. It is, as of now, not titled because some hooligan stole her title and published the same book. They didn't steal it. I think they both had the best idea at the same time. And then just a handful of weeks ago, we heard that somebody who just started the book project sold their book on, I can't say who because it's not public knowledge yet. They sold their book on proposal in an auction to Dutton as well. So you'll be hearing about that as soon as it's public knowledge. So that's a pretty active year, I think, in terms of success stories. But on top of it, thank you. Yeah, let's applaud those folks. But on top of those great books, I think we should also acknowledge that a lot of people broke through, just writer's block maybe, or little stumbling blocks they'd hit in drafting their books. And you have to write it before anything else happens with it. And there's something great about just that act itself. And so we celebrate anybody who has had breakthroughs with their books. Bill also wanted me to mention that part of the book project is having access to some great visiting authors. We recently had Cheryl Strayed give the keynote in the fall intensive. This very night, Erika Krouse will be giving the keynote, and then Vauhini Vara in April. So very cool to see you all here. I'm going to turn it over to the lovely and talented, great dressing William Haywood Henderson.
Hello. Thank you, Andrea. I'm just going to tell you a bit about the book project, and you're going to hear from various mentors and Shauna, our publishing expert. First, I'd like to just introduce the mentors. Erika Krouse in the book project, and several people are sick, so they're not here. Ben Whitmer, Vauhini Vara, Rachel Weaver, Anna Q, and me. And then we also have a mentor from the postgrad year, which is like a third year. If you think, I need to just keep working on this, or people come back later to work on it. Tiffany Quay Tyson is, she looks thrilled. I'm kidding, she loves it. And Natalie Hodges and Sarah Elizabeth Shantz are also mentors in the third year. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how we created, or why we created the book project. We had a lot of people who had been taking workshops for years, and they would just take the advanced novel workshop over and over, or they'd find a teacher they liked and stick with them for a couple of years. People writing memoirs and nonfiction. And we began to think we need something where they can focus on it with a group of people who know their book. They don't have to start over every time. They get into a workshop and there are 5 new people in the workshop. Some people know your book, some people don't, or it's a different teacher. So we looked at graduate school model, where usually you're in a pretty small cohort, depending on which MFA program you go to. And we kept it at 6 per cohort. So it's intimate, you know each other really well, you get to know each other's books, which is really important. So working with that, and over the 2 years, you also work one-on-one with your mentor. Your mentor gets to know your book really well. You take a couple workshops with them usually, plus you take workshops with your cohort, plus sometimes you meet with your cohort separate from a set-up meeting with your mentor. I'm saying a lot, excuse me. That's my favorite word. And so then we thought, well, it's going to be a workshop-based program, so you get a certain number of credits for a certain number of workshops, and a lot of craft classes you can take, a lot of things you can attend. You can trade credits for an advanced workshop during LitFest. I'm going to talk about the fellowships we have. We try to keep the prices down as much as possible, but we know any program is a stretch for a lot of people. So we have fellowships, our established emerging writer fellowships, which have been ongoing for quite a while. We have new funding to reduce tuition for qualified veterans. And we're really excited to announce the Nighthawk Nature Writing Fellowship. This is brand new for starting in this fall. The fellowship supports book project writers of fiction or nonfiction who write about nature, the wilderness, and/or animals in such a way as to promote empathy and compassion toward the natural world. Book project applicants will apply for the fellowship as part of their book project application. When you apply, you see the application, which comes out April 1st. And we didn't pick April Fool's Day for any particular reason. On the application, you'll be able to select which fellowships you're interested in being considered for. I thought I would start just by calling out all the members of the faculty and staff, because it's an incredibly impressive faculty. I'm going to get through that sentence eventually. There's me, of course, the most impressive ever. God, why am I on this list? Vauhini Vara, she's a mentor. She's the author of the novel The Immortal King Ra, which is a finalist for the Pulitzer, and the story collection This Is Salvaged. Erika Krouse, also a mentor. She's the author of the story collection Come Up and See Me Sometime, the novel Contenders, the memoir Tell Me Everything, Memoir of a Private Eye, winner of the Edgar Award. Very impressive. And the forthcoming story collection Save Me. Ben Whitmer, who I think is online, also a mentor. He is the author of the novel Pike, the co-writer of the memoir Satan is Real, The Ballad of the Leuven Brothers, the novel Cry of Father, and about 10 novels published in France. He's very fancy. And his new novel is called Dead Stars. It's in French. It's très bien. Rachel Weaver, also a mentor. She is the author of Point of Direction, winner of the Willa Award. Very impressive. Anna Q, mentor. She is the author of the memoir Made in China, a memoir of love and labor, named a New York Times Editor's Choice pick. Shauna Kelly, our publishing expert. She is a former agent at William Morris, and in the book project, she presents a 2-year intensive course on agents, book sales, and everything else you need to know about anything at all. She's helped me find an agent in the past. She's kind of amazing. Chris McCauley, who is our weekend AV and everything else assistant. We're very, very happy to have him. Torin Jensen, Assistant Director of Special Programs. He's the guy who keeps the wheels of the book project running. Without him, would be a complete disaster. Don't tell anybody. Andrea Dupree, well, you just saw her. You don't want to. She's the founder of, co-founder of Lighthouse and the muse of this wonderful place. And now we're just going to go through everyone who's on the staff is going to give a little talk about a different topic. And then we have a student panel who's going to talk about their topics. And then we'll open it to Q&A. So I think that about covers what I was going to say. I'm going to hand it over to Erika, who has been a mentor from the very beginning of time.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks to everybody for being here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the book project is in comparison to an MFA program, because I think a lot of you are more, maybe are considering an MFA program or come from one, and also, or you're thinking, well, should I do this or do that? So the book project is a book-centric program more than an MFA program, which is a degree-centric program. MFA programs are academic programs, so there are sometimes language requirements, et cetera, and things that send you toward having that terminal degree. But book project is focused and designed around writing a book. That's what we care about, finishing that book. MFA programs are also often focused around short work, short stories, essays, poetry, to accommodate that workshop format and often a higher number of students. So if you're writing a novel or a memoir, sometimes you get left behind by those programs. Book project can accommodate any genre, long or short, fiction or nonfiction. And if you're interested in poetry, there's the Poetry Collective. So money is a difference too. Book project is, and tell me if I get these numbers wrong, $8,850 a year, which we all have in our pockets. Well, no, but and that total is $17.7 thousand. That took me a lot of brain power to figure out. But MFA programs cost you usually in money $40,000 to $60,000 for a low-res program, and for a resident program with full funding, they're like, oh, it's free. You still have to move there, and you have to support yourself wherever that place is. And uproot your life and often quit your job. So the book project, just in money, is usually cheaper by $25,000 to $40,000, and you don't have to change your life. In an MFA, you have to tailor your life around that program, and there's a grade. In the book project, we tailor the program around your current lifestyle to the extent that we can. At least half of our students attend while working full-time or more, raising families, et cetera. Sometimes they have health problems, et cetera. It's our job as mentors to help you fit writing into your existing life. With MFA, you maybe get 100 to 150 pages of your manuscript read with feedback, usually limited, from your thesis advisor. I know this because I work at MFA programs, and it's pretty limited. With the book project, you get workshops plus a full read by your mentor of your entire manuscript up to 100,000 words, which is equals to be about 400 pages. So it's a difference of hundreds of pages more that you get to submit and get feedback on. Since you're a cohort of 6 and over 2 years, you're working with the same mentor, your mentor really gets to know your writing and your work by that time. And as opposed to a graduate program where you're changing each semester and you're likely to have much less exposure to your thesis advisor or your teachers. You just get more time with your mentor. A lot of BPers come, and that's a thing, BPer, that's actually a thing, come to the book project with MFAs already in hand. We've had students with MFAs from the University of Iowa, Cornell, University of Florida. We've had a Pulitzer Prize winner in journalism and another finalist. I had a student with, she had 7 other books published. And we get PhDs too. So and also people who are brand new, right? So it really depends on the project. We also have Shauna, and Shauna will talk to you about that. We have publishing help in the book project, which you don't get in an MFA program. And like Andrea said, we've had a lot of published books come out with her help. Last, I want to talk about the community. It's much less competitive than an MFA program. It's less backbiting. People help each other. The group size, again, is smaller, 6 for your small group, and also larger, because there's the larger community of 90, I think, including per year, right? Including the 3rd year folks, and renewable by half each year. So you get to know about 144 writers, I think. That's a number. I did work it out, but I don't know. So you get to meet, like, you have the opportunity to meet a lot of people during your intensives and workshops. So to close, a few of us do teach at MFA programs, but we usually prefer, I mean, I'll say it, we prefer teaching here because the students are way better, and we're able to give them much more value for their money. So I don't know who's next.
Ben Whitmer is going to talk about, thank you, Erika. Ben Whitmer is going to talk about working with a variety of genres and hearing a variety of points of view.
Okay. I'm not sure if I can be heard, but whatever.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. So, I mean, I love genre and I love working with genre. And I even, contrary to popular opinion, love the genre of literary fiction, which to my mind is probably the most strict genre with the most defined tropes. But one of the reasons I love it is that, in fact, I love genre so much that I write in a dead genre, unpublishable in the US, which I'm very, very proud of. But one of the things I love about genre is that, like, each is its own kind of literary tradition. And I think it's as interesting to me to see sort of the structure that people are attracted to or shy away from as it is the content. And sort of like one thing that I always get tickled by is how much Americans dislike the genre of tragedy, right? It was Howard Barker who once said that you come out of tragedy equipped against lies. You come out of a musical, anybody's fool. So, and I particularly like seeing genres that are sort of combined. Like one of my favorite genres is sort of the melding of fiction and memoir, like in Jim Harrison's Wolf or Stephen Graham Jones' Growing Up Dead in Texas. And part of the reason for that is that I like it seems to me different genres allow us to talk about different things, create space for it that we don't see in other genres. So like one of the things that I think is pretty fascinating is that most of our discourse around theology these days seems to take place in the horror genre. And most of our discourse about class takes place in the crime genre. In the sort of enforcement of social boundaries, you might look to police procedurals. So almost anything I can find something to tag onto. And I don't think there's a fundamental difference in the way you write a book, genre to genre. There are different sort of traditions you work within, but that's true of everything. It's like poetry. You can't let the text extend to the margin of the page. That's the tradition for that. So anywho, with that said, that little rambling bit of nothing, I'm all for all the genres, and I think everybody else here is too. We're interested in it. and we would like to see all your genres. I'll leave you with one quote from Alan Moore, which is, "My experience of life is that it is not divided into genres. It's a horrifying, romantic, tragic, comical, science fiction, cowboy detective novel, you know, with a bit of pornography if you're lucky." Oh, that's all I got.
Thank you, Ben. You can clap if you want.
Clapping for Alan Moore.
C'est formidable. Oh, he wasn't, I couldn't see. Our next speaker is Vauhini Vara. She's also on Zoom. She had a whole cohort that was all remote, and it was from like around the world. So she's going to talk a little bit about that and about applications.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Bill. Super exciting to have a whole new group of people considering applying. So I'll talk first about the Zoom thing. It's funny because I've often been the person here talking about Zoom, and over time it's turned out to be the case that our mentees, people who participate in the book project in general, increasingly are, like many are local to Colorado, and many don't live in Colorado and are remote and do some portion of the book project over Zoom. My best guess is that it might be half or more than half, but Bill can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And so it's not like it used to be this sort of separate niche thing that some people were trying out, and now it's very much just a part of the book project culture. And so everything about the book project is accessible both in person and over Zoom. I tend to often have entirely or largely non-Colorado cohorts. And so we tend to do a lot on Zoom. We do our cohort meetings on Zoom. I'll meet one-on-one with people on Zoom, but that's often true with people in this day and age who are local as well. So anyway, that's what I have to say about Zoom. There's a very robust offering Zoom-wise. In terms of applying, there are always a ton of questions at these sessions on applying, and I'll try to pre-answer them anticipatorily. So on the application, some people will say, what are the most important parts of the application? The application has a bunch of questions. You have to submit names and contact info for references, and then you have to submit a manuscript. And the reason I say that last part with emphasis is that I would say that by far that manuscript that you submit, I should call it a writing sample, that writing sample that you submit is the most important part of your application. It's what we look at first. And so I would say, if you're trying to figure out your priorities in terms of what you should focus on in applying, I would say that's the first thing. People also ask, should I submit something that's part of my the manuscript that I hope to work on in the book project? Many of us mentors would strongly recommend that, because we're trying to figure out if you're a good match for the book project, and we're good matches for you as mentors on this particular project you're working on. And it's much easier to get a sense of that if you're submitting part of that project. It also gives us some sense of confidence that this is a project that you've made some headway on, which I'll also speak to next, because people who come into the project have varying levels of amounts of manuscript written. So I had one mentee come in a couple of years ago with literally just an idea. And then he sold his book in his first year in the book project, and now it's out. His name is Simone Stolzoff, and his book is called The Good Enough Job. So that's somebody who came into the book project with a great idea, literally nothing written, if I'm remembering correctly, and finished his project and had it about to come out in the world within 2 years. Many people also come into the project having completed a full draft of a manuscript, and they find themselves stuck or just knowing that they need to work on this more. And so they come in with that full manuscript intending to revise and spend the 2 years working on that project. And so we ask questions in the application about sort of where you're at with the project. And it's a sort of value neutral question. We're not judging where you are. We do generally want to see that some headway has been made, but sometimes that's as basic as, I have a great idea and I have enough writing experience to know that I can do this. We also ask for a bio. We ask a little bit about your background. because the book project is intended for people who are ready to write a book, oftentimes, and this isn't like a binary, always yes or always no kind of thing, but in general, I think you tend to have a better chance of being accepted into the book project if you have some prior writing experience. And it doesn't have to be an MFA, for example. It can be you've taken some workshops here and there, or you've shared work with friends, or you've sent work out for publication, or you've been published, or, so we define that fairly broadly, but we want to see generally that this isn't just like the first thing you've ever tried to write. There are always exceptions to the rule. So I'm sure are exceptions to that rule. In terms of references, we often will contact your references. They don't have to write a letter, but we often will contact them to get a sense of who you are as a person and as a writer. There are lots of questions on that application, but I would say the things that I just spoke about are probably the most important things. Certainly the synopsis of your project, where you give us a sense of what it is also sort of up there in terms of pieces that are important. So feel free to ask questions about this in the chat or in the Q&A if you're on Zoom. One question that I already saw on Zoom was about notification. So we tend to typically notify people of their acceptance in July, and the program runs from August. The sort of academic year of the program is August through July each year. Yeah, if you have other questions on Zoom, you can put those in the Q&A. And if you're there in person, obviously ask questions by raising your hand or whatever the plan is in person.
Hello. Thank you, Vauhini. That was very comprehensive. That was really useful. Thank you. Right here.
The writer who didn't yet have a portion of his manuscript ready to propose as a sample, like what did that look like when he was filling out his application?
So as best I can remember, this writer described the book in some detail in the place in the application where he could offer a synopsis. And it helped that this writer had he was a journalist, he is a journalist by trade, and had significant publication experience. And so that gave us a kind of sense of confidence that even though this book was not yet even written a little bit, this was somebody who had the background that would allow him to write the book. So yeah, he did describe the book. And even though he hadn't written any of it, he came into the book project, either came into it or very quickly after starting, sort of had a very detailed outline and sense of what it was that he wanted to write about. An outline, by the way, an outline is, I'm value neutral on outline. Some people are going to write books that are impossible to outline. I often write books that are impossible to outline, but in this case, it was the kind of book that turned out for this writer to be well served by an outline. And so that was something he developed early on. So that gave us as people looking at the applications a sense that this person was well prepared to take it on.
Thank you for those questions. Our next speaker is Rachel Weaver, who's going to talk about cohort meetings.
As Rachel's coming up, I've got a question that's popped in.
There's some more?
Yeah, we've got another question. Someone's asking about if
Shoot.
there's an idea about a typical time commitment per week expected to stay on track or to be successful throughout the program.
Can we hold off on some of those? Because those are things that people are going to talk about.
Yes, we can do that.
Good. But thanks for the question, and we'll remember. Someone's talking about that.
It's
I think you
recorded.
are, Emily.
Okay, so cohort meetings, Bill mentioned it a little bit here in the beginning. So the way it works is each year, every cohort meets with just their mentor and just their cohort members 6 times, and then 6 times again the next year. I always think about things in terms of semesters. So it's basically 3 each semester, so fall semester and spring semester. And every mentor runs it a little bit differently, but it's essentially the same. Those classes are, first of all, they're an opportunity to build community with your cohort so that everybody gets to know everybody gets familiar with each other's projects, everybody gets to be good friends. And then secondarily, all of us use them as a way to help you progress through certain foundational craft elements. And then from there, in the second year is where all the mentors sort of diverge. Some people switch into a workshop, so each person within their cohort is reading everybody else's manuscript. Some people continue with the crafting lessons, but overall, they are an opportunity to, let me back up one second. One thing I want to say, I do teach in MFA programs, and one of the things that's so different about the book project is that you get to work with someone for 2 years. So as a mentor, to be able to sort of lead the journey of a writer for 2 full years is an amazing opportunity. So each of us as mentors take that on in a little bit different way, but essentially it's the way that each of us feel is going to be the most helpful, so that all of those steps are covered, and by the time you finish that 2-year program, you have this super strong foundation to continue writing, to finish your project, to start another project. So that's how it works. Did I do my job?
You were really, really good.
Thanks. Can I go now?
You can go.
Okay.
Thank you. Leave the mic. Thank you, Rachel. Anna Q is going to talk about these one-on-one meetings.
Yes, hello everyone. Okay, so I will say one of my favorite things about the book project is the one-on-one element. So when I went to get my I got my MFA at Sarah Lawrence, and one of the reasons I chose that program is because they had a one-on-one option, or every other week you could meet with your, they called it a Don, but it was basically your advisor. And that was one of the reasons I chose that program. But as Erika was saying, that program costs about $30,000 a year. So what you guys are getting is monumental in terms of a writer that has a ton of experience guiding you through 2 full years. And some of the things that I want to talk about is ways in which you can utilize that one-on-one time. So obviously there is your writing obstacles, your woes, your writing practice. So I write nonfiction, so that is a really difficult genre, and it encompasses holistically, I think, the person. So I mentor that way. But also, you know, anything craft related you can discuss. You can also just, after reading your pages, you can discuss craft recommendations, book recommendations, inspirational books that you should be reading that is aligned with, you know, the kind of writing that you're doing, and that's really important. So you have someone who is familiar with your work guiding your journey. And then, of course, there's the direction of your entire book. This is the book project. So how do you write a book? This person is going to lead you down that path. And I think it is an incredibly difficult journey. And I think it is huge to have a program like this. It is something that most MFA programs do not have, and it's something that, you know, many of us got our MFAs and we're like, okay, well, now we have to learn how to write a book. And then we spent the next 10 years writing a book. So you're getting all of that benefit, which is, again, huge. And then finally, you know, also publishing in other ways. This is your opportunity to talk about short essays that you're writing, short stories that you're writing, how you're presenting yourself within the literary community, how you're involving yourself in community, whether it's reading series, festivals, literary journals, residencies. You are building a community, and you need a way to sustain yourself. You know, I think of writing very much as a practice, right? It's not something you're gonna just sit down and do in 5 weeks' time. It is a long, I think Steve Almond called it a marathon, right? So it is something that takes a really long time, and it's a huge, huge commitment. And we are here to support you in that journey. And I think that makes it really invaluable. And I also teach at a low-res MFA program, which I think is also relatively equivalent in that you get that one-on-one time. But again, the value is so much more within the scope of being able to be remote, also being the focus of, again, the book instead of a single essay or a single short story. You can write, 3 or 4 short stories that don't amount to a collection. This is meant to look at the lifetime of a book. And so I think that is a very unique journey, and you need, really great mentors for that. And I would, everyone that works as a mentor in this program really cares about their students. And I think we're willing to work with you in whatever way is going to most support you as that writer. And finally, one-on-one time, it's accountability. And I know a lot of you have trouble with that. You don't want to be like, oh my God, I have a meeting with Erika. I don't have anything to show, anything to say. So that will light a fire under your ass, if nothing else will. And then also for those that are local, the one-on-one time, it's a great opportunity to also meet for coffee. I meet my students in person over Zoom, whatever works. I meet them in the mornings if they're a parent. I meet them in the evenings if they're full-time, they're full-time working. So there's a lot of options, and I think Erika said this is really built to support you and the life that you already are on, and it's just, it's just a wonderful community. That's it.
Thank you, Anna. After that, I feel like signing up.
Oh, great.
Hey, everybody, and hello, friends on Zoom. I am Shauna Kelly, and I'm the publishing, I say publishing advisor, but Bill likes to call me an expert, which, is always a little scary. My background is in big book publishing. I worked for the William Morris Agency for 10 years, so I know the literary agent side and got to know the publishing side, especially those bigger book publishers, really well. And when I moved back to Denver, after having a child and realizing I could not make that work in New York, I met with Andrea, and she said, what could you teach here at Lighthouse? And I immediately said, I just feel like people don't understand how to even approach the publishing industry. And I have so much sympathy for people who spent years and years writing their books, and then they get it to a point where they feel it's as good as they can get it, and then they don't know what to do with it. So for anyone who's in the book project, we make sure that doesn't happen to you. When you're coming for the weekend intensives, you'll have a workshop with me, and that's when I kind of give all the general information, like this is how book publishing works, this is how you find an agent, this is how you decide which agents you're even going to approach, and things like query letters and fiction book proposals and other things that you're going to need to submit to agents. We talk about those in a more general way during our workshops, and you have 4 of those with me over the 2 years, pretty long workshops, like 2.5 hours. I have a lot of time in between on these weekend intensives where I get to chit chat with people about their particular books and what's going on with them, what their questions are. And then you also have one-on-one time with me, and that's, the best part for me, because that's when I get to read a little bit of what you're actually working on. Maybe I've heard you describe it, but I haven't read any of the pages, and it's a year into the project. So I love the chance to read what you're writing and give you some feedback, not just on, potentially the pages, but more specifically the query letter and maybe what kind of agent you might be looking for, how you might pitch and, try to sell your book where it might fit in the marketplace. So yeah, my role is not to, oversee. The publishing industry is a troubled and confusing and not very friendly industry. They're kind of purposefully trying to keep you away because there's so much competition, but there are also thousands and thousands of books published every year. just in this country and the English language. And I always say to people, why not you? So that's always my attitude coming in. It could be any of you who get published. And if you listen to Andrea, there have been so many people in the book project that came in full of doubt and thinking this is never going to happen for me, who ended up with great agents and or publishers. So just really pleased to be a part of that, and I'm available for questions if you have any after. Thank you.
Thank you, publishing expert. And I know we don't give grades in this program, but while we were sitting there, I gave Kathy an A+, so she can take that, try to hand it off for a pack of cigarettes. She's excited. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is we have these weekend intensives. And starting in the fall, we'll have one in September and we'll have one in April. And it'll be 3 days for each of these intensives. You get to hang out here, and if you're on Zoom from far away, you can also join the whole weekend over Zoom. We're really good at that. And we have guest speakers. Tonight we have someone named Erika Krouse giving the keynote. We have group meetings with your mentor. As Shauna said, she teaches a publishing course that goes on during your 2 years in the program. And you have time with your cohort. It's really fun, and lots of good food. I'm going to hand it off to Tiffany, who is, and the postgrad year also joins these weekends. Tiffany is a mentor in the postgrad year.
I was not positive I could make that big step, but proud that I still can. Yeah, so postgrad year, why? So for a lot of reasons. First of all, one of the things that I think a lot of people realize when they're in the book project or when they're going through the book project is that in the course of those 2 years, they are going to make tremendous progress on their books. But that book often kind of becomes something bigger. I mean, you become a better writer when you're in the book project. I've seen it happen. I teach a lot of classes here. I have a lot of book project students in my workshops, and I can tell you that they become better writers as the 2 years go on. And in the course of that, you may not, in fact, finish your book in 2 years. You may finish a huge portion of it. You may finish the first draft of it or even the second draft of it, but you may decide that you want to continue working on your book and that you value the community, that you need deadlines, that you like having a mentor. And that is one of the reasons that you might choose to go on and do a 3rd year in the postgrad year. Another reason might be that, let's say you finished your book project year, you graduated from book project 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and you really thought you were on the cusp of finishing that book. And then without the structure, without the community, without the mentors and the teachers and all of that, you sort of let it founder. We can help you recommit. So what the postgrad year offers really is a focus on finishing. That's our goal, or at least it's my goal, is to help writers who are pretty far along go ahead and finish. I also have one writer this year, and this is just an example of how you might use this, who is really, really far along, and I'm going to be reading her manuscript really soon, and she's going to be starting something new, and we've agreed that I'll read a little bit of that before our time together is up. So, there's also that possibility that you'll start something new having written your first book, having put that first book through its paces. So a lot of possibilities. And what you get is, again, you get a mentor, you get a cohort. We have 6, as we cap it at 6 as well, so it's small. You get the community. We meet as a cohort 3 times throughout the year together, 2 at these intensives. We also attend the intensives, and we have some sessions that are really geared toward the postgrad year, really geared toward polishing, really geared toward publishing. You get extra time with Shauna, who you've already met and who is definitely an expert, and frankly, that's priceless. And there are two possibilities. You get some workshop time, you get some availability for craft classes, you get some discounts on classes that you want to take. There are two possibilities when you decide to embark upon the postgrad year. You can do sort of the basic, which means that your mentor will read 50 pages of whatever it is you're working on, whether it's something you're finishing that you've started before or whether you're starting a new project. You can also do what we call sort of postgrad plus, and for an additional amount of money, you can get another read. You can, so if you went through the book project and you got a read from your mentor, and you think, okay, I'm going to finish the next draft, and I'd like this mentor to also read and give feedback, you can do that. My mentees this year meet several times a week via Zoom for writing hours. And I can say that it's been great for the ones that show up and do that are making tremendous progress. I am a big stickler for deadlines and goals and, making sure that you know what you want to accomplish over the year and breaking it down into manageable chunks. And so they report to me on a regular basis about where they are. And the ones who are showing up for these writing hours are killing it. I have great faith in these books. So that's really what the postgrad year does. And like you can do it right after you finish your book project time. You can just sort of like slide into a postgrad year. You can apply for that. Or you can, have a little space between your regular book project and your postgrad. And you can do it more than once. We had one mentee, I think, who did it the first year, is doing it again this year. So it's really like anytime you want the community, you want a little refresh and a little push on whatever project you're working on. Once you're a book project person, we still would love to see you. I'm not going to do that.
Hi everyone, my name is Torrin Jensen, and along with Andrea and Bill and Chris, I help run the book project. I'm here to talk about the credits that you get during your 2 years in the program. You get four-week credits, you get 2 8-week credits that go towards a generative class, and then you get 3 credits that go towards an 8-week critique-based class. Our distinction there is critique-based is you're in workshop with your fellow writers and you're giving and getting a lot of feedback, and the generative classes are more, they could be survey courses or focused on a particular format, so a little bit less feedback there. We try and work really closely with our mentors and our instructors during the regular sessions, which pretty much run year-round, to offer classes that are helpful to book project participants. And depending on your manuscript's needs, you can also use those credits towards other things. So regular sessions are running pretty much year-round, but we also offer periodic genre fests throughout the year. We have one based on genres like thrillers coming up this March. We also have visiting authors visiting town to give lectures. You can use those credits towards those as well. And then the other big thing is Lit Fest, which I know has been touched on before. Shauna probably talked about a lot of the business aspects of Lit Fest, but we also bring in renowned writers from throughout the world that teach week-long and weekend workshops, and you can use some of your credits towards those workshops. So it's flexible. We're there to help you support your book, and the classes that we offer hopefully help that too. Is that anything else I should touch on? Okay. And I think coming up next, we have some past participants talking about their experience. Thanks.
I've heard so much about the program that I'd like to join it. Yeah, you'll get to know Torrin and Chris very well. They're magic and they fix everything, make everything great. Now we're going to hear from a couple of students who have not graduated yet, right? Sorry, hurry up. We love them. Kathy Davenroy, Preeti Venka, Zoe Gulliver, and Brad Barfield. For me, it's really interesting to hear the students talk about their experience. You guys all want to come up at once and just all talk at once? However you'd like to do it.
I'm Kathy Davenroy, and I'm a second-year book project participant, and Mr. William Henderson is my mentor. You've heard a lot about the workshops and the group activities that we do, and I want to say a little word about the one-on-one opportunities, because this is where you deinstitutionalize and deprogram yourself. This is where you become the writer who you are with your mentor who helps you become a writer, not just someone who likes to write. So that's been my goal for the whole book project. And I would say that the one-on-ones have been most effective in helping me become a writer. Really important and critical to the one-on-ones. They help you initiate goals, hold yourself accountable, identify very specific craft issues that you can use workshops to fill gaps and work on revision. I learned that revision is as creative as your first drafting, which has come as a big surprise to me. You get a lot of direction in picking the classes and the workshops and helping shape a program that meets your needs as a writer. Recommendations for books on writing, finding mentor texts, and the other texts that sound kind of like you, so you can help use other styles to help in your own writing. And finally, not to forget the one-on-ones with Shauna, as well as your mentor. Both those experiences have helped me become a reader, read my work as a reader, not just as a writer, which is really essential for getting published. So there you go. Those are the one-on-ones. That's just one aspect of the program. Thanks.
I think you've heard a little bit of this before, but I'm going to talk about the cohort experience. So I wrote this all out, so I'm just going to read it. There's a saying that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So I think that's some of the logic behind the book project 6-person cohort, including yourself. Being in the cohort kind of feels like you're joining a baby cult, because the goal is to drink the Kool-Aid together, that your writing matters, that your future books deserve attention, and that it's a worthy pursuit even when the world is going crazy. I came into the book project with an MFA where I'd already had, trusted readers and writer friends, but I think the cohort kind of took it into another dimension because I didn't exactly choose these people. They were chosen instead by the Lighthouse faculty mentors and directors. And, they kind of set you up on this blind, if curated date with 5 other determined writers for the next 2 years, which has huge value because it's really rare, as others have mentioned, to get to know someone's work really well. I never had that in the MFA program. You can dig deeper, give and get better feedback. And I think one of the most satisfying things is knowing where your fellow cohort writer wants to go in year 1, and they're not quite there, but seeing them land there in year 2, which is really satisfying for the whole team. I don't think everyone's gonna turn into your best friend. Maybe you won't see eye to eye, but you kind of can't help rooting for each other because you've spent so much time with them. A few of the ways my cohort works is we have to take some workshop classes together, but we also read each other's papers or pages outside of that. We have a group chat that we update each other on writing girls' progress, and even now daily life stuff. We share milestones. We share contests. If people are going to residencies, we share deadlines, fellowships, book lists. There's just so much we're talking about. And in our second year right now, we're reading each other's full manuscript. So I guess to conclude, we all know that this big project of writing a book is lonely and can turn into this echo chamber of doubt and lost time. But I think my cohort has been like a huge force multiplier in my writing life. I've thought about writing in new ways and taking chances I normally wouldn't take. So just to end that, I've definitely raised my average with these 5 other writers. So I hope that kind of explains what the cohort's about.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm also a second year. I'm going to talk a little bit about the intensives again, the getaways, and Lit Fest briefly. So the intensives basically leave you feeling like a damp washcloth. Like you are totally wrung out, exhausted, and totally saturated as well. And then like 4 weeks later in the middle of the night, you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I just understood what Erika Krouse said and I have to rewrite my book. But like in a good way. It has like a lot of really great guest speakers. The mentor and cohort time is really valuable, and it basically just kind of puts you in this box where you're just around a bunch of nerds. It's awesome. And Shauna also, of course, is a really big highlight. I was also terrified of Shauna at the beginning because she represents the part that, like, the book is scary enough, and then thinking about the book after is like horrifying. And Shauna makes it so much easier to think about that part. It's really, really amazing. The getaways, speaking of hanging out with nerds, it's awesome. It's just totally like basically unstructured time to just write, hang out in this tiny town in Fairplay and just, maybe have the chance to see a moose, read. If that inspires you, spend a lot of time just sitting there and writing because there's nothing else. And then in the evening, you get to hear and learn about each other's projects, and it's so awesome. You get supercharged learning about everyone else's process, what they're doing with things. It's just the best. So I highly recommend that. I know a lot of people in my year, it feels like, don't take as much advantage of that part as I think people should because it's invaluable. And LitFest, you can learn a lot even from a really bad agent meeting. And Shauna will get you through it. And it will be for the best to have done it even when it's not necessarily the right fit. That was super bummer lesson and also a great one, and probably great to rip off that Band-Aid early on also when I think about it. So that's a super valuable part of LitFest is the agent meetings, I think, too. And again, the community. You're hanging out with not only current book project people, a lot of probably future book project people too, but a lot of past book project people and other people who are just really excited about the same thing that you are. You can take classes with some of the guest lecturers and kind of like have like an amuse-bouche sort of, ooh, do I like this class? What's this about? So yeah, LitFest, also super awesome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Barfield. I use they, he pronouns. I am a first-year projecteer, so still pretty fresh. And wanted to talk a little bit about some of the sort of like additional communities that exist at Lighthouse. When I first started taking classes here about 9 or 10 years ago, it was frightening, just because it was like the first time I was like jumping into anything that was even remotely literary or creative. I have an engineering degree and an MBA, so like I don't have any formal education in writing, and so a lot of the folks who have come in with like their MFAs or have spent like their entire lives in libraries and bookstores, like that just wasn't me, and I wasn't really sure like what writing was going to be able to be for me. And I'm also a multiracial queer person, and Lighthouse has always provided an environment where I always felt safe and welcome. And sometimes it's really, really nice to have folks that share your identities when you're going through this really, really challenging, daunting, but exciting process. And so a few years ago, the Queer Creatives program and the Writing in Colors program were started here at Lighthouse. There was always sort of like some semi-unstructured, like bringing together of people with shared identities, but it's really taken off since then. And there are festivals now that for writers of color, for queer writers. There's a whole nonfiction fest. So whether it's about your specific identities or sort of like the identity of your work, it can be really, really amazing and helpful to be sort of surrounded in this like little bubble by people that share your identity. The Queer Creatives Fest was the first one I went to this past year, or yes, October, November-ish, and it was incredible. There was like 60 queer aspiring authors and writers who were just, and current writers who were just so protective and enthusiastic about what it means to create fiction and nonfiction and work from different lenses. And when I first started coming to Lighthouse and we're in workshops, I may have felt that I was kind of like the only one in the room, which can be a little intimidating. So whoever it is that you are and whatever kind of work that you want to write, there are places for you, and even if they're not completely structured and have an entire festival centered around them yet, there probably will be in the future, because I know that Lighthouse is a place that is really trying to celebrate and put forth work of all different types and stripes, because that's so important for our literary community. And I hope that you all get to experience that. So thank you.
I always love hearing the student experience. We could tell you all night about what you get, but knowing what it feels like is pretty important.
Could June go first on Zoom, please?
Oh, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jian. I was a book project fellow in Erika Krouse's cohort and graduated from the program in 2023. I was an entirely remote attendee for the majority of the book project. I was living in Korea, which meant during the intensives, I had to rent a hotel room to not wake up my partner in our tiny apartment, and was Zooming in from about 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. KST. So as you can imagine, it was pretty chaotic. And though I'm sure my experience would have been very different if I were located in Denver or even a comparable time zone to Denver, I don't feel like being remote and on the other side of the world even impacted my experience in the program. Like Vauhini and Anna mentioned, for remote learners, there's always plenty of Zoom classes and asynchronous options. And of course, my wonderful mentor was understanding about my time zone issues and was very accommodating about when we set up our meetings, which ended up being an awkward time for Erika often. So I'm grateful for that. The book that I wrote at Lighthouse went on to sell in a 12-house auction to Knopf, BFYR, which is a YA imprint of Penguin Random House. And it's slated for publication in fall of 2025, if all goes well. In a lot of ways, I feel like my whirlwind experience from draft to selling, because it all happened within like 3 years, is largely thanks to my time in the book project. I say this because I tend to be a very avid drafter, but I get discouraged during revisions. And so I'll just bounce around new projects without really finishing anything. But the structure of the book project and the accountability I felt to my mentor and also my wonderful cohort kept me focused enough to see the book through to a queryable state. And actually also once I started querying, it was Lighthouse's industry mentorship via Shauna Kelly that helped me decide between a few different agency offers. And thanks to her, I'm now signed to an agency that feels just about as perfect a fit as is possible in this industry, which is, by the way, Aisha Pandey Literary, in case anybody in the audience is like trying to compile a list of agencies to query in the future. I love my agents. I love the agency. I can't recommend them enough. Which is all to say that the book project is a wonderful program, a very warm community, and can definitely change your writing life if you let it. And I hope everyone who enrolls enjoys it as much as I did. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'll go next. I'm Emily and I was in William Haywood Henderson's cohort graduating in 2021. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about balancing, I guess, the book project with work or any major commitment, I guess, in terms of time. So that would include other things that I haven't done, like parenting a child. But it was my biggest concern, I would say, when I was applying, and kind of the thing that I went back and forth on when I got offered the place really was I going to be able to manage the timing? I'd say a few things. So the first, sorry, I get nervous when I speak in front of people. The first thing is, one thing that I did at the point that I got offered the place was just for my own confidence in accepting it. I gave myself the challenge of doing an amount of work every day for a couple of weeks with the life that I was living. So I do recommend that because it gave me that confidence kind of going into the program and being a cheapskate from the north of England who didn't want to pay the fees, that I was actually going to get the value out of the program, which I feel that I did. So that was one thing. I set myself that challenge. And then, I'll just take a breath. And then two things, like from actually being in the program. So I'm a lover of drafting, and I was starting with a very new project. I was pretty much 15 pages into the project when I applied. And so I loved that early stage. And when I was drafting, it wasn't really that difficult for me, honestly, to prioritize that alongside work. But what the book project did for me in that stage was kind of legitimize the fact that I was allowed to be having this much secret fun, like before 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. when I was starting work. And it kind of gave me a reason to do that when it felt like the big and important and serious things in my life, which were at that time my job, were kind of more important maybe outside of the program. And then I would say on the flip side of that, you know, inevitably for me it's revision, but you hit the challenging times. I graduated in 2021 and I'm in the challenging times, I would say right now, like revising that same project, which I still love and I'm going to finish. But during those times, I'd say in terms of balancing the priorities and timings with work or other commitments, the book project kind of gave me that level of support and that level of kind of accountability, and especially from my cohort and mentor, that, you know, I really did have to dig in and commit to this project, even though it wasn't the kind of fun little side secret affair that I'd been having, you know, during those drafting stages, which is sort of how it felt. So yeah, I would say obviously you have to spend some time working, and for me, the decision to spend the money was very much about, like, could I prove to myself that I was gonna, you know, really knuckle down? And at the end of the day, like, it's you that sits down to do the work alongside everything else. But the kind of support and accountability got me there, I would say, many more times and many more days than I would have had otherwise. I just needed that kind of initial sense that I was going to be committed, I guess, for me to make that decision. And so maybe that's something you'd want to do too. But yeah, I think that's probably it from me.
Hi. Yep. I'm Michael. I'm a second-year student in Ben's cohort. I'm going to be talking about Ben and being in a cohort with a mentor. I think if you're anything like I was when I was thinking about applying for the book project, I was kind of like in this very lonely state of writing a novel all by myself in my own head with my imaginary friends, doing their imaginary things, and having my wife come home and me telling them about their imaginary days, and her just like glazed over, like, okay. And like when you're writing, there's like this thing that you don't get with other art forms where you can't just like meet someone and just be like, hey, look at my manuscript. And you can't just show them like if you're a painter, you can be like, you like it? And if they have no idea what they're talking about, at least they can go, yeah, it's sick, cool. But if you're a writer, like nobody's gonna just read 400 pages for poops and giggles. But that's like exactly what your mentor does for you. And you have 2 years of this person who is inherently into you and your stuff and your story, and they want to know more about it. You can talk to them and have honest conversations about like everything you're thinking about. And the honesty kind of is like, it's not just you, but I mean, again, when you talk to somebody who maybe, isn't a writer and isn't really in your work, you get like a lot of pats on the back. Like, it's like, this really sucks. This is really hard. And they're like, you got it. And you're like, but I don't know if I do. But when you have like an experience with your mentor, they can be like, it does suck. I've been through this. I've done this whole process multiple times, and you can see that. I think this is the biggest thing that I've taken away from the book project, and this is going to sound like maybe not the best thing, but it is the best thing. Like that, just learning that writing a novel, and a really good, let alone great novel, is really, really, really hard, and it's always going to be hard. And yet it's like, this opens up a space with your mentor that can be like a rewarding thing. And when you're kind of by yourself and all alone, that's the thing that gets you to kind of stop. And I did that many times, write something and stop because I'm like, this is really hard. But then you have a mentor who's like, no, you're on the right track. I know exactly where you are in the process. It's not easy, but you're doing the work. And the thing Ben always told us, and it's the number one thing that stuck with me, that writing a novel and writing is grunt labor. And you just got to keep checking in every day, and you got to keep working and getting better, and you will get there. And it's about drafts, and it's about, sticking to your guns, but also being flexible to listen to feedback. Especially once you get to the point where, you've talked with your mentor for a long time, and then they actually do read the novel, and then they tell you what they think about it, and you got one or two ways to go, which is to, say, well, screw you, I did everything right, why are you doing this? Or like open up your heart and open up your creative mind to be like, okay, well, maybe everything I've been thinking for so long isn't exactly, set in stone. But I think that mentor relationship is kind of like, it is the anchor point to the whole book project, going out through your cohort and then through the whole, everybody that's in the book project, but kind of gives you that grounding to honestly write a book without having to like Steve Allman said, like have like ego about it, like just be able to be really honest about it. I mean, for me, I came in with writing one book, and like after the first intensive, I was like, I don't think this is the book that I meant to write here. And part of it was because the book that I really wanted to write, which I'm writing now, I was like, I don't know if I can write that book. I'm scared of that book. But it was like that quickly. I was like, okay, having this mentor and having this project is like the perfect place to take the risk, to do the hard thing, because, you'll find in the book project, when you talk to everyone, it's hard for everyone. And so that doesn't have to be a scary thing. And so I think that mentor relationship is really kind of what is that guiding. It's the lighthouse that guides you, guides you through it. But yeah, very good.
I'm wondering why I'm bringing up the rear, but I'm Marcelina Rivera, and I'm a second year in the book project. And like you were talking about, such an integral project, part of the fellowship are the amazing teachers in the workshops, the mentorship, but also the cohort. And that's what I really wanted to talk about. These are 5 other strangers who you meet during this process, and you at least share one common goal, and that is that you want to write a novel, however reckless and bold that goal is. And you meet each other coming from that place. When I was thinking about doing the fellowship, I, maybe like you all, was a bit weary of classes. Maybe it was my age, but then there was the fact that I was an introvert and a bit of a lone wolf. And so the thought of being with a group for 2 long years of people I didn't know really was not on the top of my list. And so what was going through my mind was, why don't I just write this thing and then hire like an editor and then try and go pitch it, and let's do that. And man, am I so glad I did not slink back to my comfort zone and try that approach, because I don't think I'd be where I am. We have an amazing mentor in Tiffany Quay Tyson, and I'm sorry, Tiffany, but I know you don't like me to punch you out that much, but Tiffany is a great leader, friend, mentor, and cheerleader for our group. But our group is an amazing group of people. So I have been surprised as that introvert and lone wolf by finding 5 other people who I have deep respect for their work, and I also like them. We're not, BFFs and hang out together all the time. Others are, are on Zoom and in other places, other countries, but we greatly care for each other's work and genuinely care for each other. We also laugh and have a lot of fun. We talk behind Tiffany's back a lot. We meet on Zoom, even without the program, to read each other's work, keep each other going. And when life happened, for me, and I hadn't written in a while, and I think we all talked about it, it happens. This was the group that inspired me to get back in front of the computer, get it going, even some tough love among these friends and cohort members. And that's what it's all about. We really have built this community. And whatever the cohort doesn't give me, then the safety net of the other amazing people at Lighthouse fills in. So if you do not continue writing and you don't finish, it is no fault of your cohort, your mentor, or Lighthouse. That's all I have to say. It really is, the buck stops here if that is the case. The cohort quality and experience, so integral with this fellowship, has made me both a more productive writer and a better writer, hands down. So.
Thank you. We've gone a little bit over, but let's take a few questions, and then you can always write to me with questions, and if I don't have the answer, I will send it and to Andrea. Andrea at lighthousewriters.org and William at lighthousewriters.org.
I had a couple of quick questions on the application. First, on references, is there anything that, like say you only have professional references, stuff that might not be rated creative writing, are those okay? And then on the second question is based on your writing sample. So you have a larger portion written and maybe your favorite parts are in the middle of the manuscript and maybe not that first 30 pages. Is it recommended that you show the first 30 pages of your project, or maybe, give a sample of other stuff that you like, and then maybe if you need to include glossary or thing characters so that the evaluator can, pick up what's going on? What's the recommendation there?
As far as recommendation, they don't have to be a creative writing teacher, because a lot of people are coming back to it when their creative writing teachers were 20 years ago. As far as the application, as far as the material goes, as long as you're clear on what it is you're giving us, so that we know that there's a break and that this is something later. If there are different kinds of voices in your piece that you want to show us, you have up to 30 pages to show us. It'd be nice to see the opening 10 pages and then see what you can put in. Do you agree or disagree?
if you've taken any classes with Lighthouse instructors, definitely use them as references. Some people are like, oh, well, I don't want to be too, I want it to be impartial. Don't be as biased as possible, because we know those people. So if we see you taking a class with Tiffany, for example, and she says, yeah, thumbs up on this person, that means a lot more than some stranger that we've never met.
That's true. I've got a question here on Zoom. I asked it earlier, which could be a great question for you guys here. Sort of this typical time commitment per week, per month that you guys sort of engaged with on your novels, your stories throughout the program.
Yeah, obviously variable because life happens, but the challenge I gave myself was an hour a day before I decided to take the place. And I've heard other people, it might have been you, Erika, at some point, say that even some writers who are so crushed for time, it's 15 minutes. It's just that kind of 20. Yeah, that kind of momentum, I think, is really important. But you can do so much work in a focused session of 20 minutes. It's kind of amazing. But yeah, I think it's that momentum more than anything else, maybe. Others will want to comment on this.
In terms of like what is required with the program, it's, you have like the intensives, and then you have your meetings with your mentor, and those things are kind of just like throughout the year. It's not like every single week you're expected to do something. I know like my cohort, we meet once a week most of the time, just to like talk, and we share some pages sometimes, but also that's like something that just came naturally. It's absolutely not required. Not all of us are there. But cohorts are good. You kind of gain that. But in terms of like, if you're thinking about like, what do I need every single week? Like in terms of your writing, that's kind of up to you. And then the things that are required they're not going to like take over your life, I'd say.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's about your own schedule and crafting it to your schedule, and you can do that. Our cohort, I guess everyone's really busy. We only meet once a month. You guys are meeting once a week? Seriously? Wow. Anyway, we meet 1 hour once a month, and then when I was whining about not having time to write, Tiffany said she writes from 4:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., and it's really hard to find anything that conflicts during those times. So I am now writing from 5 a.m. until 7 a.m., and damn, she was right. Can't complain.
We have time for maybe 2 more quick questions. So we've gone pretty well over. Anything else? Here you go.
Hi, my book project would be a collection of short stories. So how would that look like for me, and what would be a manuscript for something like that?
I love short stories. Okay, so it's the same. I usually almost always have short story writers in my cohort, and many other people too. Yes, Vauhini, yeah, but I think she sometimes does nonfiction only. Oh, she's doing fiction? She's doing fiction. Oh, okay, yeah. So like many of us write short stories, love collections. I find that whether it's novel, essays, memoir, or short stories, everyone learns from each other in really important ways, and there's not really having the mixed cohorts is incredibly valuable, I think, for a lot of people. So it would be the same. You'd be working on building up that collection, and I find with short story writers especially, they start with being like, this is the best story I've ever written, and everything's going to sort of fit around this one short story. And then they get so much better that one short story gets kicked out of the collection. So again, it's the craft elements we learn are the same across all the genres really, and fit to everything. So it's the water's warm for short story collection.
What would I include on my application in terms of my writing sample? Would I give you an actual short story? Yeah. Okay.
I'm asking about the fellowship. Does anyone have any suggestions on that part of the application?
So the fellowship comes from the writing samples, and then there is a documentation requirement just in terms of tax forms or something like that. And what the mentors do is they put forward some of the strongest ones that they want to work with who applied for the fellowship. They narrow it down, and then it goes to Shauna Kelly, who reads them without any of that information. So, and if you are somebody with teaching experience or something, let us know, because sometimes we have some partial fellowships available. So that's another thing to keep in mind. We don't have many of the full. We have like 2 full fellowships and then some partials.
That's it. Thank you, guys. Now we're opening it to questions. If you can ask anybody who was on the dais, is that how you pronounce it? Dais? Stage, thank you. Does anyone here or on Zoom have a question?
We do have a really good one on Zoom. Someone's asking if they haven't taken writing courses in a long time, and so then they don't really maybe have references that might be as direct. What would you recommend that they put in for a reference, or who?
They would put in somebody who knows them. We're going to talk to people to get a sense of who you are. We can judge your writing from your sample. So if you haven't been in classes recently, but you have a writing partner, or if you want to sign up for a class in the spring or whatever, like a 4-week class or an 8-week class, then you can ask that teacher or instructor to give you a recommendation. We don't need a recommendation, as I said, about the quality of the writing. That speaks for itself. But we just want to make sure we know who's coming here. Everything's fine. Yes.
Thank you. How does the mentor-mentee matching process work?
That's a really good question. I heard a lot of whispering from the students over here. God damn it, I got stuck with Bill. The way it works is you apply with a certain mentor in mind, and you list your top 3 people. And when we go through the manuscripts, the person who is, if you're interested in someone, one of the writers, and they put you first, you kind of get first dibs on that person. And then we work our way through, we start to fill up the cohorts, and then there's some horse trading at a certain point, because some people have too many people, or we think this person, they wanted me, but I really think they're for Ben. And that works out really well. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It's also juried at first. We have some readers who read through all of the applications and put marks on them. So that gives us a starting sense. It used to be that the mentors would all read them all, and there were 160 manuscripts to read. So we cried, and then Andrea said, let me get you some help. And it actually worked out really well. Thank you.
At the Lighthouse Writers Guild Workshop, on the website?
Yes, they're on the website. So you go under book project, and then there'll be the application down there. It opens in April 1st. The link is on the website, yeah.
Oh, wow. If you already have a first draft, is the program a good fit?
You have a full draft of your book?
Oh, yeah, but I need to edit a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good fit.
Okay, so it's still
Yeah,
fine.
we asked for 30 pages.
Sorry.
We asked for 30 pages as a sample. And sometimes that's all the person has. So if you have a full manuscript, you're totally fine. It's a really good place actually to come into the program.
What might they do with their drafts once they're...
With their full drafts? Well, they'll talk to their mentor. At the first meeting, we talk about sort of what your project is, what you want to work on, where you're going. You'll start taking workshops where we'll see your work. Not only will we talk about craft issues that have to do with line edit kind of things that could be improved, and also we'll talk about the full arc of your book. And when you work with your mentor, in your cohort groups, you have different topics each time you meet. You have 6 of those each year. So some of them will be about like the arc of your novel. So you get a chance to sort of take it apart, look at it, put it back together. Do you guys want to talk about that at all? There's some whispering going on over here.
We were just talking about how beneficial it really seems to be to have a working draft, right?
Yeah, I don't still, but if I did, the intensives really help you reconstruct what your draft will be and what it's doing. And it's amazing because, like I was saying about the, sorry, when you have that dream in the middle of the night that is like, oh my God, I remember and I solved it, that's gonna happen whatever stage you're at, over and over. And so if you have a draft coming in, you're gonna have so much to play with and all of it will be relevant faster. I have some stuff that I'm still excited for it to be relevant, but we're not there yet. First draft is a great time.
Yeah, and exactly. The whole thing, the opportunity to take it completely apart and rebuild it from the bottom is a miraculous event. And it only really happens if you have sort of a good working idea that you can pull apart and revise creatively. So, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the full manuscript. It can be, as I said, 30 pages. But let's settle in here. But I have to keep readjusting this. I have no idea what I was going to say. Oh, well, we talk about the way, we can see what your writing is, what the strengths are, even if it's 30 pages. And then we talk about the way that you're going to create a full story out of that. And then, and we work from there. So it doesn't have to be a whole manuscript. But as they said, it puts you a step or two forward. People are often scared, like, I only have 30 pages. Like, that's fine. Apply with your 30 pages. Is that good? Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have like a preference for fiction or nonfiction or, certain genres? Does that matter?
Me personally? Yes.
The whole program.
Yeah, we take prose writers of book-length prose, so nonfiction, memoir, short stories, collections of essays, hybrid novels, hybrid memoirs, novels. I've worked with all sorts of genres within novels, anything from sci-fi to fantasy, a lot of YA writers, and straight novels. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, there's certain mentors who that's their area of expertise. Like maybe Preeti could talk about working with Vauhini. Never mind. Sorry. Yes, well, we do have people who lean toward certain subgenres. So Vauhini would be the one if you were writing straight nonfiction or evidently a novel. I would be novel and memoir, and a Q memoir. Erika, she has a mix. You have nonfiction too, right? She has 2 essays, 2 memoirs, and 2 novels. Not that she wrote, but that she's working with. She has more than that. Any other questions? Anything from the world of Zoom? Oh, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for coming, and make sure you send questions to us. You can write to me, William, at lighthousewriters.org, or if I don't know the answer, you can write to Andrea, or Torin, or Chris. Yeah, don't write to Andrea. She has enough to do. Sorry about that. And thanks again to all the speakers and to the students. Really appreciate your time. See you guys around.
And for folks who are here, we'll have a recording of this up on the website next week. And if you have struggle accessing that, feel free to email our info@email with any other questions. But yeah, look for this recording if you want to rewatch. Ask any more questions, info@, or like Bill said, anyone here. Thank you for coming.